Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stoliarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our virtual Enlightenment Salon of March 5th, 2023. Today, we are going to field your questions and your comments about any matters related to the U.S. Transhumanist Party. That will be the focus of the majority of this session. We have periodically held these kinds of Q&A sessions within the U.S. Transhumanist Party in prior years, and we thought this was a good opportunity to do another one, particularly because we have several significant announcements for you. And the first announcement that I would like to delve into is the rotation of our vice chairman position, which is presently in effect. It was in effect beginning March 1st, 2023. And the reason we instituted this rotation is to essentially continue the move toward a more decentralized organizational structure where more of the responsibilities are distributed among the officers. So our vice chairman for the past 2 3/4 years has been Arin Vahanian, and he is still going to be part of the vice chairman rotation. But as is the case for essentially all of us who are volunteers, we need to do other things to make ends meet financially. And Arin is a tax compliance professional. He has a very successful business, which has a lot of clients during the midst of tax season in the United States. So this is, of course, the midst of tax season in the United States. And as a result, we thought, well, what would be the best time period for Arin to contribute as vice chairman? And that ended up being the period between November and January of each year. So during the other months of the year, we have asked other Transhumanist Party officers to pick up the duties of vice chairman. So effective March 1st of this year, our director of visual art Ramon Garcia, has assumed the duties of vice chairman, and he will continue in those duties until June of 2023, and he will return as vice chairman in May through July of 2024. So 4 months this year, 3 months next year. Then after Art Ramon, Jason Geringer will be the next vice chairman from July to October of 2023. And then next year from August to October of 2024. Now, Arin is going to return as vice chairman in November of both this year and next year, and he will serve in that role until January 2024 and January 2025, respectively. And then Anthony Nielsen is going to be the vice chairman from February to April in 2024 and 2025. So that takes us through the next 2 years and 1 month. It gives a lot of continuity to our organizational structure. We've discussed internally what the role of vice chairman entails. Of course, one major aspect of that role is in the event that I am unavailable for whatever reason, either I can't be reached, I may be traveling incommunicado and there's an emergency, the vice chairman has the ability to act and make time-sensitive decisions on behalf of the USTP. Also, if I'm indisposed for a longer period of time, say due to some sort of illness or massive internet outage that lasts for many days, I hope that doesn't happen, then the vice chairman may be able to make decisions. But there's also going to be a bit of initiative within the vice chairman role. The vice chairman will be able to have certain projects, a certain degree of agency within the Transhumanist Party, and we hope that having the authority to do a bit more will result in a heightened level of activity within the USTP. Ultimately, this has been part of our historical trajectory of growth and development. If you recall, Zoltan Istvan, when he founded the party, essentially ran it as a one-man operation. He did everything. He drove the immortality bus. He spoke with reporters. He wrote articles. He wrote the first draft of the Transhumanist Bill of Rights. And it was impressive, but there's only so much that one person can do. And likewise, in my role as chairman, there's only so much that one person can do. And in order to truly grow, we need the regular contributions of multiple of our officers and of our members. So this is a step toward that. Ultimately, the purpose of a political party organization is to have institutional mechanisms that do not depend on any one individual in order to function well and function smoothly. And for that, we need a good organizational culture. We need good internal protocols, and we need people who are motivated in order to perform this kind of work on a regular basis. So this is going to be part of that gradual transition. And now I'm happy to turn the discussion over to our current vice chairman, who came into this role on March 1st, Art Ramon Garcia, for any statements that he would like to make. Art Ramon, please go ahead.
Definitely an honor. Doing whatever I can to assist and help the party. I did decide to take on a project. It's a historical timeline of transhumanist leaders, which I am implementing on our website. So that's a project I've taken on, and I think we've had a bit of a blind spot with the timeline and historical, somewhere where we have the historical documentation of people who have contributed to transhumanism. So I'm going to put that on our website as a source of reference, and and go from there.
Yes, thank you very much, Art Ramon. And with regard to the historical timeline of our essentially forebears in transhumanism and proto-transhumanist movements such as Russian cosmism, please feel free in the chat or afterward via email or on social media to suggest events, key figures, key works of literature to include within the timeline, because we want to have a diversity of sources for that timeline. And as long as a particular entry can be well substantiated so that we know it's real, we would be happy to include it. And that is the case for various areas of technological development, various intellectual currents that influence transhumanism. So they don't have to be from the United States necessarily. For instance, cosmism originated in Russia with Nikolai Fyodorov, but there, of course, has been some intellectual spillover since that time. Now, we do have a question that I want to address because this is important, and this is definitely an area where we frequently encounter questions. How can a foreign member contribute to the transhumanist movement? So, of course, we allow non-US residents, non-US citizens to be allied members of the Transhumanist Party. Our membership is free. You can go to transhumanist-party.org/membership and join us there. And in terms of internal contributions, discussions within our organization, contributing articles to our website, contributing project ideas, volunteering for us, all of that can be done by non-US allied members just as easily as can be done by US members. Essentially, the only thing a non-US member is not able to do is vote in official US elections, but you're even able to vote in our internal elections. So when we have our nomination process for our US presidential candidate, when we have our platform vote or votes later this year, even allied members from other countries would be able to vote on those as long as they're purely internal USTP decisions. Of course, if our candidate is on the ballot somewhere in a state, or we have a ballot initiative that we support, in those official elections, you wouldn't be able to vote. But I think that's well understood. All right, so I would like to now hand the opportunity over to Jason Geringer to say a few words about his role as vice chairman, which will begin in July of this year. Jason, what would you like to say in this regard?
Well, I'll be around anyway. So I think this whole the idea about the vice chairman is really it's good to keep a continuity of government type of situation to where there's at least you know it, if something happens to Gennady is not there. And I like the idea of each one of us having these new initiatives and new projects. I don't really have something specifically off the top of my head in mind, although there's a lot of other ideas. When we start talking about the Transhuman Club, I'd like to. I wanted to talk to Art about maybe getting a group there going and have some contests about using AI like Midjourney and all that, and maybe coordinate there out of the Transhuman Club, and 'cause that would be fun and generate a bunch of cool stuff. Uh, you know, a little bit, I guess, about me is what brought me into all of this politics in general. When the situation started becoming all toxic, it motivated me to do something. Okay. And one of the first things that I tried to do wasn't even join a political party. It was create a wisdom of the crowd group where all the members uh, evaluate and discriminate information. So, I'm really into consensus in that. So I could maybe be a centrist, although y- y- I agree with the platform. So whatever our platform is, that's where I'm at. uh, but so I'm not really looking to do anything radical or different. Just keep the reason why I'm here mostly is because Gennady, and so he's got such an even hand. He's like the perfect chairman, in my opinion. So that's why I hope he don't go anywhere. You know what I mean? There's no need to go nowhere, man. Stay right there. You know. But that's it for now. I could pass it back to you.
Well, thank you very much, Jason, and I'm certainly not planning to go anywhere. It's an honor to hear those good words from you. And of course, you have been quite a creative influence and source of quite interesting, fascinating projects over the course of the past now more than a year and a half that you have been a USTP officer, and the Transhuman Club is part of this. And we're going to delve into that extensively in the coming segment of this Q&A. But I think it's quite relevant that Art Ramon is an artist, and you have been involved in a lot of artistic and musical endeavors. You have a channel where you create animated music videos, and of course, we had our collaboration of futuristic neoclassical music where you remastered many of my compositions, and they're now featured on the Transhuman Club website. We held a virtual concert on December 25th, 2022, which was essentially a full-length virtual Enlightenment Salon with these animated music videos. And this is important because art and music draw public attention. When we had our session with Open Longevity, Anastasia mentioned the fact that art seems to draw some of the largest audiences. And I think this is because art is very immediately accessible. People can see what the vision is. People can be inspired by it. People can wonder, well, what will it take to bring that future about? So I am looking forward to the endeavors that you will implement. And now let us go to Anthony Nielsen for his remarks in regard to what he would anticipate in his role as vice chairman.
I don't know. I wouldn't say I'm an outlier, but I feel like my focuses are a little bit different than some of the typical transhumanist causes like life extension and immortality, cryogenics, because I'm more focused on the practical applications of technology that's available right now and bringing that to the public. So like, for those that don't know my background, I've got 15 years of industry experience as a chemical engineer and chemist. I've been very much involved in, I would say, the forefront of emerging technology. Currently, I'm working on e-waste recovery to take microchips and CPUs from computers and phones to recover the valuable materials that are going to be collected and resold. So I would say that that would be my focus as the vice chairman, is to focus on things that are more readily available to the general public, because as I understand it, things like life extension, cellular regeneration, cryogenics, and stuff like that are currently not necessarily in reach to the general public. So one of my biggest causes that I like to talk about is stuff like affordable housing, creating a circular economy for things that we use as human beings and can possibly reuse, as well as the politics involved with democratizing this kind of technology.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Anthony. And of course, Anthony is our Director of Technology Outreach within the U.S. Transhumanist Party, and he has a lot of knowledge of the kinds of technologies that are either immediately available or can be implemented in the very near future in order to resolve some of the problems that he has mentioned. And he and I both reside in northern Nevada, so we have a lot of awareness of the housing affordability and availability crisis in that area. But this is a crisis that has affected an increasing number of areas in the United States. And we believe that emerging technologies hold one of the keys to addressing that crisis. Of course, the other one would be in the realm of policy, where we need reforms to enable more housing to be built more readily with fewer restrictions. So thank you for those remarks, Anthony. And we have 3 additional individuals joining us who have played important roles in the U.S. Transhumanist Party in recent years. We have our Director of Longevity Outreach, Ben Ballweg. We have our Director of Scholarship, Dan Elton. And we have Daniel Tweed, who was our endorsed candidate in 2022 for City Council in Thousand Oaks, California. So I would like to give them the opportunity to say a few words before we delve into the Transhuman Club presentation. So Ben, let's hear what you have to say.
I'll just say I'm happy to be here and looking forward to answering questions as the audience has them today. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ben. And Dan Elton, would you be able to say a few words?
Yeah, I feel like this is a good time for people to ask questions, and also, you know, tell us what you think we should be doing as we move into the 2024 campaign season. And yeah, we're definitely looking for volunteers. So if you're interested in helping out, please reach out.
Yes, absolutely. We are going to make further announcements regarding the 2024 campaign season, the selection of our presidential nominee soon. I'm hoping by the end of this month. So definitely stay tuned, pay attention. If you have any ideas, reach out to me or to any of our officers and essentially let us know. I will say it's going to be different from 2019, and we are going to minimize the chaos. Absolutely, that is my priority. We are going to have every single one of the candidates for our presidential nominee be a person whom I would be proud to support in that capacity, so that no matter who wins, we will all win. Now, let's hear from Daniel Tweed, especially in regard to his campaign in 2022. So, Daniel, how did that go for you? What did you learn from it? And what lessons do you think can be carried forward for other USTP endorsed candidates?
Yeah, I actually ran for the 3rd consecutive try, 2018, 2020, and 2022. I was hoping to get an exponential vote doubling, but seeing as how I was spending virtually nothing, as other candidates in the pool of, I think there were 10, they were spending an average of, say, $50,000 to get their votes. I think, you know, I was talking with a makerspace group that I'm affiliated with, and they said, you know, why are you running for city council if what you really want to do is change the visionary policies of government? Maybe you're going about this in kind of a backwards way. So I'm planning to start something called the Center for Civic Futuristics and affiliate with a local university here in town, Cal Lutheran. And I think that's going to be an additional way to leverage transhumanist ideas, because what really got me interested in being a candidate, albeit a what's the word for a I'm blanking on the word, a loose cannon candidate or a dark horse, I think is, but I think what I'm trying to do is get government to anticipate these onrushing, accelerating technological changes that are going 99% unaddressed, I think, in the halls of governance right now. So I would just encourage everyone to become more engaged in topics of civic futuristics and study them. And there is one thing that's on the policy radar right now. The Federal Trade Commission is taking public comments for a non-compete clause ban. And this is when companies hire employees, they sometimes make a contract of adhesion where you're not allowed to get another job in the same industry sector. And this is estimated to put something like $300 billion back into the pockets of employees. And I'm thinking that it's a transhumanist issue, that it's a kind of a form of soft human trafficking when you try to control someone's life beyond the purview of an employer relationship. So I would like to see that. I think the comment period closes on March 20th. So it's very interesting to go on their FTC website. I think you can find it pretty readily with a search. So yeah, sorry if I talked too long. I'll pass the talking stick there. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, Daniel, for that discussion. And certainly in the U.S. Transhumanist Party, we support individual autonomy and individual choice, including in matters of employment. So non-compete clauses appear to be antithetical to that. If you could share with us the link to provide public comments on the FTC website, I think we can spread that to our viewers as well. And I think also it is important to perhaps broach this issue as part of our next platform vote in order to make sure that our members are aware of it as well and get their input. Because I agree that an employment relationship is a relationship for a defined period of time, however long both parties wish to continue that relationship, and to place restrictions on people after that relationship has ended would be a significant overreach. And it, of course, impedes competition in the broader marketplace, and competition can often be an impetus for creativity and greater variety of options for consumers. So now there is a question that I would like to address from Mike Lazine. And Mike writes, I'm curious to know how the party will address the hot button issues the GOP or Democrat voters are focused on. Will we ignore them or address them? So this is, I think, important to focus on in terms of our philosophy, our general practice of how we engage or don't engage with these issues. And I'm certainly not saying that we shouldn't engage with these issues, but I am quite emphatic about avoiding the trap that wedge issues present, in that they are deliberately intended, as the name suggests, to drive a wedge between segments of the electorate and thereby essentially create predictable demographics for the major political parties to kind of exploit and say, okay, people within these demographics, they're likely to think this way on this particular issue, so we're going to target them with certain advertising. And it's a very cynical way to make life more convenient for the politicians of the major parties and their strategists and their advertisers, but it's quite deleterious to the rest of us. So if we address these issues, we're going to address them in creative ways that do not fall within the established narratives of either the Democratic or the Republican Party. And along these lines, we do have some statements that I think are informative as to how we would approach those issues. When the New York Transhumanist Party Constitution was written and it was adopted last year, there was an immutable operating principle inserted into it, immutable operating principle 2, which specifically refers to avoidance of wedge issues. And this is what it says for the New York Transhumanist Party, but this is valid for the USTP's broader philosophy as well, and what we have done in practice. The New York Transhumanist Party shall strive to avoid any emphasis of wedge issues, where a wedge issue is understood to be any issue that is intentionally used by either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party in the United States to divide the population of the United States into factions supporting either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party as applicable, and vehemently opposing individuals who do not support their chosen party. Examples of wedge issues include conventional Democratic Party or Republican Party positions on abortion, firearms, and controversies surrounding matters that utilize terms such as race, gender, and sexual orientation. Avoidance of the emphasis of wedge issues does not preclude the New York Transhumanist Party from attempting to address or resolve the fundamental problems that underlie such issues. However, any attempt at a resolution should endeavor to be creative, original, civil, technologically and rationally grounded, and focused on seeking to reconcile the legitimate values and interests of as many individuals involved with such issues as possible, while avoiding any intentional alienation or demonization of any individual, including individuals with different points of view from those of any member or officer of the New York Transhumanist Party. Avoidance of the emphasis of wedge issues also requires the New York Transhumanist Party to refrain from expressing one-sided agreement with the well-publicized stated positions of either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party on these wedge issues. The longer a time that the Democratic Party or the Republican Party has held a particular position on a wedge issue, the greater is the presumption that this is a partisan position designed to divide the population, and therefore the greater is the need for the New York Transhumanist Party to avoid expressing that particular position. And again, I would say if you replace New York Transhumanist Party with US Transhumanist Party, this would still hold, because ultimately what we want is original constructive discourse on policy. And you note this statement doesn't say don't discuss these issues. This statement does say make sure that we are making a contribution to actually solving the problems that are involved. And as an example, abortion is a wedge issue, but our position on abortion within our platform is to render the issue obsolete via ectogenesis rather than take one or the other side of the conventional debate about abortion, because both sides have legitimate interests and legitimate rights that need to be respected. And the question is, how do we use technology to arrive at an outcome where those rights can be respected in practice? So now, Jason, would you like to say more on this subject of wedge issues?
Yeah, I was. We actually kind of do talk about a whole lot of the issues that are going on today. There's a whole section of our Discord server that's called USTP policy discussions, and there's a role on there called legislative analyst, and basically, if you're capable of having rational discourse without it getting all crazy, well then we'd love to have you come, and everyone on this panel is in there because the officers can get in there. The whole section you can only see it if you have either the officer role or the legislative analyst role. So if you really want to talk about the issues and you are capable of rational discussion without using all kinds of ad hominem attacks, and we're the party of rationality, we should be able to do this, and me and Lewis have had some heated arguments, so I'll tell you what, but we're still brothers and we're still talking and stuff, even though we disagree on a lot of stuff. So, if you want, let me know. And, like Mike Lazine, I pretty much can guess that you will be fine and a rational actor, and, would be fine talking about all these issues. It's just, we really want to try to avoid the whole circular firing squad mentality that all these other political parties do. We want to avoid that. If some of us will say about how can we set ourselves apart. Well, I think that is the best way to set ourselves apart, is be the party of irrationality. Humanism is right at the heart of that. And most of us know. This is a really rational group. I really, really like it. That's why I feel so at home here. I mean, that whole circular firing squad mentality, it actually does something. It's like, not to try to pick on one party per se, but the fact that like the Republicans will like attack each other and everything like they do, you know, that pulls everyone to one direction. You know, that meme, sorry Elon fans, but that meme about you know, about he stayed the same and everybody else moved left. No, I don't think that's true at all, because of the dynamic of this circular firing squad, where to get ahead you attack your buddy, and you know, and it makes it pull to the right, and that's not good. I don't want that to happen. So let's be civil and rational. You know, I love talking about all these issues, but you know, it's not if, you know, the person's just gonna get all emotional and be all crazy. It's no fun. It doesn't do us any good. It doesn't get us to a solution. Like Janani said, we need to be trying to find solutions, not going around in circles. You know. So that's it. I can hand it back now.
Well, thank you, Jason, for those remarks. And I certainly agree. We need to look for solutions in every discussion. We do have a little bit of feedback from our audience. Matt Alex Richards writes, the problem is in any position where one is not polarizing, one is being seen as weak or utopist. I don't necessarily agree with that, because I think a lot of people are tired of polarizing discourse. Indeed, it turns a lot of people off from politics. And when we suggest something new, something different, people can pay attention with more of an open mind, because this isn't part of the established fault lines of mainstream politics. And as a result, they may not think that they're able to predict what we're going to say or how we're going to approach a particular subject. And as a result, we would have an opening to actually influence what they think about that subject without falling prey to those conventional stereotypes of left and right. And Ampero writes, yes, ectogenesis will force a new debate. It will. There will be some people who are opposed to it. And yet, I think if we illustrate the massive advantages of that option, and it would be an option, it wouldn't be mandatory for people to have children via artificial wombs or to have children at all. That freedom of choice is not going to go away. However, ectogenesis will provide for greater individual autonomy, greater true reproductive freedom, and also the ability to bypass what may currently be a conflict of rights that is not possible to resolve with contemporary technology without violating somebody's rights. So if you have a way with technology to make sure that everyone's rights are respected, hopefully that will get a lot of people on board. Now we have joining us our Director of Sentient Rights Advocacy, Tom Ross. Welcome, Tom. I would like to give you the opportunity to say a few words as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I only have about 15 minutes to go here on the break, but yeah, I think we're on the right track. I was going to propose that when we have the primary, that instead of having debates where we're just slinging sound bites at one another, we treat them more as roundtables, where we actually bring our passion planks together and discuss and look for solutions, so that the public and the electorate can see how we will work together. It takes more than just one person to run a superpower. It takes a hive of very cooperative people. And so I think it would be a very smart move, and would fall in line with our core ideal of rational discord, to, instead of debating, instead of tearing each other down and infighting, we bring the planks that we're most passionate about in our platform, and we discuss them. And that'll give us a chance to sharpen our arguments for them. And it'll show the people, and we may not be in the White House in 2025, but it'll show people a whole different paradigm-breaking way to approach campaigning. And they'll want to see how we will work together. Again, I think the pendulum is swinging back away from the whole divisive, tactics that have been used. It should have swung a while ago, but it's at its peak now. It's peaked out, and so we really need to start showing people how we work together. And when we do have a transhumanist candidate in the White House, how they will work together. We need to really change everything. We need to be iconoclastic about how we approach campaigning, how we approach governance, all of this stuff. So, yeah, that's. I think we're just right on the right track when we start talking about how we got to get away from infighting and the circular firing squad, as Jason said.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Tom. And indeed, when we have our nomination process, if we have more than one candidate, what we would call a debate is not going to be the same thing as what the major political parties would call a debate. Because if you notice during the 2020 presidential election, the candidates, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, were literally shouting over one another. And that's not something that we would tolerate within the USTP. Indeed, we had two candidates in the 2019 primary process that misunderstood the purpose of our debates and viewed them as more conventional mainstream political contests, and they behaved in less than fully civil ways. However, if you look back at the recordings of those debates, even they were a lot more civil than the Trump-Biden debates. And that, I think, speaks to the strength of the ideas of transhumanism and the structures that we have set up within the USTP. Because even two people who were inclined toward making this contentious could only go so far. Whereas Donald Trump and Joe Biden could just shout unintelligibly over one another and have their debates devolve into literal scream fests. We didn't let that happen. No matter who would have been involved, we wouldn't have let that happen because we have a better structure for the debates. First of all, as you said, Tom, there is more of a roundtable format in that we ask the same questions of each candidate, and the question is never how are you better than your opponent or how are you better than the other people who are seeking the nomination. The question is, what are your views on this particular issue that is important to our members or important to the voters? How would you address this issue, or what are your ideas? What areas of the USTP platform do you wish to emphasize? And indeed, that is how we're going to approach the interactions among the candidates. What I will also say is that any candidate who gets to participate in this process is going to be vetted thoroughly, and we have candidate eligibility criteria in our Constitution, which were inserted in late 2020 after our U.S. Transhumanist Party Reform Summit that many of you may recall attending. And furthermore, the expectation will be that they do not treat the other candidates as rivals, because ultimately we do, at the end of this process, need to come together and act as a unified transhumanist party in our messaging to the public, in our outward-facing outreach, which will be the majority of what is done during the campaign season. So I do think that because of various circumstances, the 2019 primary season was too long. It should have been shorter. And indeed, in our platform, we support explicitly shorter primary seasons. And that is going to be the case in 2023, so that we can have a concise, elegant, civil primary season and then go on to the general election campaign with our nominee and perhaps other individuals who would be involved, like a vice presidential nominee, transhumanist cabinet, so that people would be aware of who would occupy various cabinet seats if a transhumanist candidate were hypothetically elected president. So thank you for those remarks. Tom, and one question, this is a practical question that Luis Arroyo poses. You have to be 35 years old or older to run. Yes, that is correct. So by the US Constitution, you have to be 35 years old or older. You have to be a US citizen by birth. I don't like that restriction. I am not eligible to run for president of the United States, but we will abide by it. Yes.
That also excludes AI. So there's even other governments talking about, AI advisor kind of deal. So, you have to be born to have a age, you don't got a birth certificate at all because you were never born. Well, you can't be 35 years old, so you can't be president. You know what I'm saying? But we could do the AI advisor. I've even heard of other governments talking about doing that. So that's it.
Yes. Yes, we could have AI advisors, and it's interesting with regard to AI age. I think the 35-year-old barrier is going to be an issue even if an AI could have age, because what AI system could you realistically claim to have been created in 1987 or 1988 now and still be in existence as the same continuous entity? That would be an interesting discussion as well. Is there such a system? And if so, what would it be? It wouldn't be sentient. It wouldn't be conscious, most certainly, if it had been created in 1987 or 1988 or earlier.
Well, what's great about these questions is it's forcing the conversation toward what is personhood, what is sentience, what legally, because so someday we will have probably an AI running for office, and we'll need to have these questions answered long before that happens. And so I think that's why it's a good conversation to have now, just to work these things through before we have to work them through.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely agree with that, Tom. And Daniel Tweed writes in our internal chat that he would propose the USTP's creation and publication of an infographical style spreadsheet with all political parties, including their platform stances. I like that idea, and I think we could do a better job than a site like isidewith.com, which has a lot of misleading information on it. I know, because it has statements that are represented as being positions of the US Transhumanist Party, which are not, in fact. The mistake that isidewith.com makes is that it allows just anyone to identify as being part of a political party without any verification whatsoever. And then their personal opinions get expressed as positions of the party's support base or something like that, even if we haven't made a statement on those issues. So the information on isidewith.com is misleading. I tried to correct it on multiple occasions. I have had no success in doing that. So if we can make our own comparisons, I think that would be more productive. And Daniel Tweed writes, credible sources must be cited. Yes, any such infographic would need to represent the positions of the other parties fairly.
I really like that idea, but it could be pretty controversial. Somebody might get mad because, one column is going to be whatever Donald Trump wants. I mean, he's got, so I'm just saying.
Well, we would have to look at the official documents of each of the parties, because if it's a platform comparison, then the Republican Party has a written platform, the Democratic Party has a written platform, the Libertarian Party has a written platform, the Green Party has a written platform. So again, that kind of document, it would take a lot of work. It would take research to essentially see what do these platforms actually say, even if we think perhaps the individual politicians don't live up to those aspirations, and often they don't. I don't know if Donald Trump has a coherent platform in his mind or if it changes from day to day. But we do need to fairly represent what is written.
It would also probably show how there's like corporate Democrats and how on a lot of issues, they're the same in a way, and that's part of the whole duopoly. I think it would probably show the duopoly in a little more interesting way, and maybe visualize it. So I do like the idea, but there's people that's not going to like it. And we will.
Well,
I'd
in
like to see it.
in politics, someone not liking something, that's unheard of. So I think this is a good opportunity to branch into a non-political subject for a bit, and that is the Transhuman Club, which is our non-political affiliate. Jason, you wanted to discuss some of the new features of the Transhuman Club website, so we have it pulled up here, and you can go to transhuman.club to access it conveniently. Make sure you are signed up as a member on the site as well, because that will give you access to a lot of the features. But Jason, please go ahead.
Yeah, there's a few things that we didn't go over actually when we did our announcement thing for this Transhuman Club. One is that chat bar down there. The Transhuman Club, this site is almost like it's a whole social media, platform, really. I mean, we got our own little chat there. And also, you can link your email address to that. So if you're not on, you can just message somebody and it'll send them an email. So, that's pretty cool, I thought. What else didn't we talk about? Oh, if you go up by your name there, that little arrow next to your name, that's your member bar. So if you go to your profile, click on profile, there will be another menu in that on that page, which is a member menu. So that that gets you to more of the site that is members only. And that menu that's like below right there that he's pointing at, that's a different menu, I think, than what is up above. So there's like some of them pages that he's looking at now, some of those might not be done, but those are members only pages. They should be to where so that's where the good stuff's going to be, maybe, eventually. The other thing I wanted to check out, go to like the theater, and I've been putting the music that we've been making there. So it's kind of got the same stuff that's going to be on the YouTube channel or whatever, but we're able to put some of the animations that were in the video, on the site and stuff. So I think it's if you wanted to like jam out to all Genetics music, it's cooler coming here, I think, because I don't know, better than YouTube. Although then you don't get the views, I guess, but still.
You can still watch the YouTube video from here. For instance, you can play it from the theater page. You can play it from the Transhuman Club homepage, and then within the theater, there are pages for specific compositions as well. So we'll go to the one for Noble Aspirations, and you can access the MP3 file. There are a few images from the video, and the video is embedded here as well.
Yeah, I'm wondering, do you still get a view if somebody watches it here? I'm wondering. I always wondered about that. If you still get the view on YouTube, even though it's embedded, I don't know.
It's an interesting question. I know that a number of years ago, it was not the case that if you watch the embedded video, then the view count would be increased on YouTube. But it's possible that this has changed in the meantime. Actually, if anybody in the YouTube chat knows the answer to that question, I would appreciate you speaking up, because my impression has been that sometime during the past several years, there might have been a change where embedded video views actually started counting toward the YouTube view total. So,
Cool.
yes. And now, anything else
Yeah,
for
show
the
them
Transhuman Club?
show them where your hat is to go to your rational argumentator. It should be right on
Yes.
the first page, landing.
Yes. So we can
I
go
don't think
back.
I don't think you can actually get there through a menu somewhere. I'm not sure how I did
So
that, but
with regard to the rational argumentator, this is the home page of the Transhuman Club, and you can see the top hat with the yellow and white shield. This is the rational argumentator logo. If you click on it, there will be a version of the rational argumentator that is embedded on the Transhuman Club website. And again, this is just a convenient way of navigating to it. And you can see the latest article on the rational argumentator pertains to the Nevada Transhumanist Party and its positions on the 2022 ballot questions in Nevada. But this is just a way for you to access the rational argumentator from the Transhuman Club
and
site. And you can see you still have the menu for the Transhuman Club site up there.
if you guys wanted to, we could embed other stuff, like maybe embed Anthony's disruptor. We could embed the USTP website in there somewhere. So yeah. The other thing, check out the forum. The forum
Yes.
is, like I was saying, this is almost like its whole own social media platform, and it's better than, it's like, this is cooler than Facebook. You know, if we can make all them different categories, and then inside there is going to be all kinds of different posts. I've probably put a bunch in there. Go to the comedy one. That's pretty cool. See, you know.
Yes. Yes, indeed. So this one pertains to the virtual Enlightenment Salons. So we sometimes share them here. But yes, we can go to the comedy club as well. So the Transhuman Club is about anything that's related to transhumanism other than political campaigns. So this is a non-political affiliate organization of ours, but of course, education about politics is still within the purview of the Transhuman Club. So
I did make some sort of political comedy posts in there. Like, you know, I think that the debates, remember you was talking about the debates earlier between Joe Biden and well, I got the SNL version in there. It's funny stuff. Anyway.
All right. So we also have a blog, and members are able to sign up. If you want blog posting privileges, let me know, because you can update this with certain content. Like Mike DeVerde, for instance, has the ability to post on the blog. David Shoemaker, our director of applied innovation, has posted on the blog. But this is intended to be a venue for trusted members of the transhumanist community and the USTP to post updates about important developments that you think other transhumanists should be aware of, events, articles, your own thoughts. It's not a definitive mouthpiece of the organization. So it's not like the Transhumanist Party website set
Right.
of articles that we publish, but it is, I think, quite helpful to have this as part of growing a robust and active community. So if you
Yeah,
haven't signed up,
the
go to
permissions-
members here.
the permissions are customizable to where somebody there's a role to be able to post on the blog. So that's kind of the difference between the blog and the forum. Just anybody can go into the forum. Well, actually, there are roles to where certain forum categories can only be accessed with a certain role. Like, honestly, there's an officers category that probably I think can't see, but anyway, I just wanted to sort of explain the difference between the forum and the blog. The blog is there's a role that allows you to post on the blog, and that one guy Nate, I think would be a good guy to do the some blogging. He posts a lot of good stuff in the Facebook group. He's the one that debated Maddie
Yes,
about
yes.
the war. Yeah. He's cool. I like that guy.
We
Go ahead.
held a debate in July between Nate Boyd and Maddie Axington on the war in Ukraine. And I will have a few more comments on that later on in our Q&A session. We do, of course, just as a reminder, have the Salon page on the Transhuman Club website. And that one enables you to see some of the past virtual Enlightenment Salon recordings.
I really need to update that probably. So if anybody else wants to help, I could probably use some help just updating stuff.
Right.
It's not super hard. It's just you gotta go in and click the URL and copy it into the thing to put it into the, I could show you, but I just haven't gotten around to updating that for quite a while.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
but still, these are great salons to watch if you are interested in viewing them in an elegant setting. You can again listen to the futuristic neoclassical music concert or many of the salons from mid 2022. Here are two of our panels on the war in Ukraine from March of 2022. And I think a lot of the insights shared during those panels are still valid. It's unfortunate that this war has been going on for over a year now, but these are the thinkers who have discussed plausible ways to resolve it. So I think at this stage, we have gone over our Transhuman Club website and the features within it. And by the way, thank you very much to Alan Crowley for your generous contribution. He says, take my money now. Well, we will put it to good use. We are fortunate to have a positive net cash flow within the USTP and Transhuman Club, and essentially our only spending thus far has been on website maintenance, website improvements, paying for the domains, etc. But we are amassing some decent funds that we can use for further enhancements. But we're also in need of volunteers, as Jason pointed out. We need people to help with upkeep of the website, just updating certain content, making new posts on both the Transhumanist Party website, transhumanist-party.org, as well as the Transhuman Club website, transhuman.club. So Alan Crowley wonders, what is the link to the Transhuman Club? Here it is. It is transhuman.club. So please go ahead and join the Transhuman Club if you haven't joined yet, and that will give you access to all the features that Jason discussed.
Maybe we might want to talk about that URL and how it might be confusing because that URL that is on the screen right now is, I mean, I'm pretty sure Gennady owns that one, but it just links to the Wix site one. So sometimes the URL might be USTP LD 2021 Wix site or something like that, because that's just the profile I use to create the site. It's a separate profile that is for the legislative director position that I made, and so I ain't using my own profile. I did make my other profile of me personally another admin of the site. So I mean, but I'm just explaining that's why that URL will say USTPLD blah blah blah. So
yes, that's the same site as the
right.
Transhuman Club website. Transhuman.club is just the easy link for people to remember. And it's interesting because very few website services will actually directly host an unconventional domain extension like .club. So we had to figure out this redirect approach in order to be able to use that domain, but in a way that still enables us to work with a service like Wix, which is quite versatile and it's free to use, and Jason is aware of a lot of the functionality within it. So Daniel wonders, is the Transhuman Club on Discord synced up with the web version somehow? I think the Discord interface is separate. That's my understanding. So we do have a Discord server for the Transhuman Club. If we could somehow essentially get information from the website cross-posted within the Discord server, that would be great.
There's there's the link to the Discord right on the homepage, and there's a widget thingy that I made that I'm not sure where it is exactly right now, but it will have I think it's technically a link to the Discord server, but you can look at it and see who's on the Discord because it'll show the Transhuman Club server in there, and then it'll see who is logged into Discord. Maybe go to. I think I put it in members only section, so it's it's probably on one of the members only pages. I think it's like maybe on. I don't know. I don't remember where it is, but there's a. That's about as good of linked together as I guess I could get it. There's just a widget. So sort of, I guess.
All right. Well,
it's somewhere. I'll figure it out. And
I think this is a good overview, and indeed, people should be able to find the link to the Discord server and join that if they wish, and we can explore some ways to achieve a further integration. Now, I think we can move on to some other questions from our audience, and I alluded to the fact that there was a question on the war in Ukraine, and I do think this is extremely important to address because, as the questioner Matt Alex Richards pointed out, one of the big problems is the war between Ukraine and Russia. It's a real sore on the existential risk scale. Of course, we've had multiple virtual Enlightenment salons dedicated to this in 2022. We had our 2 panels in March on trying to de-escalate the crisis in Ukraine. Then we had our panel with IFERS and our friends Marcella Melnick and Joshua Alexander Lev, who were providing help to refugees in Ukraine. And also our discussion on my essay, 2022, The Year of the Great Filter, where we specifically focused on the existential risk aspect. That was in May of 2022. And in July, we had a debate between Nathan Boyd and Maddie Axington on whether the US and NATO should encourage an immediate peace settlement to the conflict in Ukraine. Now, a lot of events have taken place since that time, and I do think it's fitting for there to be an update session. Indeed, in September of 2022, I gave a presentation. It isn't online yet, to the VSIM, Vanguard Scientific Instruments and Management Conference in Bulgaria, where I provided essentially a status report. Given that 2022 was the year of the Great Filter, I addressed the question of how are we doing passing through that Great Filter, and how likely are we to emerge on the other end of it soon, hopefully overcoming the period of greatest existential risk for our species. So since that presentation was made, unfortunately, there were other developments that essentially increased the probability that this war would continue for a longer period of time. And it's still continuing now. So I think in light of those updated developments, it would be important for me not just to publish that presentation, but to publish subsequent commentary on it. So what happened in the ensuing months? How did that affect my assessment of it? Are we still within the Great Filter? And a bit of a spoiler, yes, we are. But when is the Great Filter going to end? And what will it take for the Great Filter sequence of events within our civilization's history to be transcended? So, in other words, to answer that question, stay tuned. We are definitely going to continue discussing this issue to a greater extent. And Jason points out there's a channel in our Discord server, the USTP Discord server, with running information about the
And
war.
Also, guide number 22 in our Facebook group for candidate and platform education. Guide number 22 is about the Great Filter. I've been keeping a running tab of the war. I've been actually paying very close attention, and I chose a couple of good YouTube channels that aren't all it's not all political. It's, nuts and bolts kind of, one is Kings and Generals and another one is Perun, Perun. Great channel. He's a guy that looks at the war from an economic and defense spending, type of whatever. He's really good. He reminds me of David Wood. I like how David Wood sets out his the information to explain it, and he does it good like David Wood does. So yeah, there's a lot of information that have been saving up for everybody. You want to go check it out. Guide number 22, or on the Discord server. But on the Discord server, it is behind it's in the USTP policy discussion section. So that's behind the role of legislative analyst or officer or whatever. Like I said, everybody here is in there. I know Daniel is. But if you want to, our Discord server is a little different than Facebook. Seems because on Discord you can kind of be anonymous and just say you're whoever, and and we got some characters in there, but I'll skip that for now. Back to you.
Yes. We need more people on our Discord server who aren't the kinds of characters you described, Jason. So join our Discord server. Now, I think we can move on to some other questions, and I will post a link to the Discord server shortly. So Luis Arroyo writes, though the USTP can take beneficial positions without falling in line with the platforms of the two major parties, we want to actually solve the issues, not benefit from them. Yes, I agree with that. I think if we address any sort of issue, it's because we want a solution to that issue. It's not because we want to exploit that issue for our own political gain or for attracting a slice of the voter population. And this is an unfortunate reality of mainstream politics and mainstream activism. Most of the organizations, whether they're political parties or they're activist groups, nonprofits, they don't actually want to solve the issues they're discussing, because if they solve the issues, then their sources of funding will dry up. We're a non-monetary organization largely at present, so we don't have this same kind of incentive. And even if we had a lot of money, our income wouldn't come from single issue types of activities, because transhumanism is a broad philosophy and movement. We focus on the progress of our civilization as a whole in a variety of dimensions. So if one problem were solved, our answer would be, yes, that's great. We have just moved a step closer to the realization of our grand overarching vision for our civilization. The more problems we can solve, the more steps along our roadmap, broadly speaking, we would have taken. So thank you, Luis, for those remarks. And then we can address Matt Alex Richards' comment. He writes, sadly, the problem of aging and age-related diseases is not really talked about from any mainstream politician in terms of attacking aging from the front. And I agree, that has been the great weakness of both the Republican and Democratic parties. They have said virtually nothing about the issue. The Green Party has said almost nothing about the issue. The libertarians, some libertarians have been, let's say, of sufficient recognition that their own advocacy of individual autonomy and individual rights would actually lead to these kinds of technological breakthroughs. I spoke with Adam Kokesh at quite some length in the aftermath of the open presidential debate in Chicago that took place now more than 3 years ago on March 4th, 2020. And he stated that he was quite sympathetic to transhumanism. He actually encouraged the formation of a transhumanist libertarian caucus. Unfortunately, the Libertarian Party is too often prone to a lot of infighting and a lot of doctrinaire ideology from multiple segments that comprise that party. So they don't give as much emphasis to technological solutions either. And unfortunately, there has been a bit of an overlap with certain alt-right circles there recently as well. And the alt-right tends to be hostile to transhumanism. So Alan Crowley writes, well, here's to all of us living forever. Indeed, I would definitely second that and encourage that particular outcome. 50 OAS writes, living forever in a continuous loop of improving and refining our values. Sounds cool. I agree. Let us reach that kind of future. Matt Alex Richards writes, thank you to me for addressing the concern that Matt posed. Anyway, it will be interesting to see what candidate takes the lead. So yes, and that will be part of our nomination process. It will be definitely a decision that will be put up to the voters ultimately with regard to whom we nominate as our presidential candidate. I do want to do a lot of vetting on the front end to make sure that all of the candidates are people with upstanding character, with integrity, people whom we can trust, people whom we could be proud of endorsing. So,
Yeah,
Ampero, yes.
a human being. That's
Yes.
what we want. Human beings.
Good human beings, yes. Ampero writes, it is possible that courts in the future might require a pregnant woman who is abusing substances to transfer the fetus to an artificial womb due to endangerment, but that is a legal question. Very interesting observation. Could there be situations where if the pregnant woman is doing something really deleterious that would endanger the life of the fetus, that to save the life of the fetus, ectogenesis could be used and the child that is born could be a lot healthier as a result? Yes, I think
I'm
that's
thinking a lot of women
possible.
will just choose it.
Yes.
I mean,
Oh,
think about it.
most definitely.
If a woman had their robot maid could also have their baby for them, and then they don't get stretch marks and they don't get blah blah blah, I'm thinking that they would do that. A lot of them. But
Yes. Most certainly, it would be a choice that many women would wish to pursue. Think also about this. We had a virtual Enlightenment Salon with Zach Varkaris, who is working on expanding that biological window for women to be able to conceive children. So let's say there is a woman in her 50s or in her 60s who wants to conceive children. And even with the aid of someone like Zach Varkaris, it would be a risky process. It would be an uncertain process. But with ectogenesis and essentially in vitro fertilization, she could do that. And she could be a parent. And of course, 50 or 60 in the future could be a lot biologically younger than it is today. But again, it would give her that option. So
yeah, I might want to add that I think in the future they're going to be really looking at this because demographics. This is something I didn't know, and this is something that I had to totally change my opinion on because I thought we was heading for this population explosion. You know what I mean? But it turns out when you look at the demographic data, uh, we're heading for almost like a population crash because as countries develop and industrialize and modernize, they have less kids, and there's a lot of countries in the world that are getting this demographic graph that looks like this, where there's hardly any young people and there's lots of old people, and so there's going to be countries like China that are going to be like, look, we got to probably invest a whole lot of something into fixing this problem. It's going to be a problem for some countries. The U.S. is sort of, like got a chimney going on. It's not as bad, but there's other countries that are going to be in rough shape, and I expect them to be trying to figure out what to do about that. And the ectogenesis and longevity will probably fix it. So maybe that's good news in a way.
absolutely. Absolutely. And as you pointed out, Jason, overpopulation is a myth. It is a myth that for whatever reason has had a lot of staying power, but it was never correct. Even in the
Right.
1960s when there was the baby boom and
It's been a
massive
lesson
growth.
for me to
Right.
keep a plasticity in mind because that's what I thought, and so I had to admit I was wrong.
Yes, yes. And as I was saying, even in the 1960s, when there was massive population growth, the resource base grew a lot faster than the population, and living standards kept rising throughout the world, except in extremely conflict prone areas. And Paul Ehrlich was prognosticating gloom and doom, essentially writing that by the 1980s, the entire world will devolve into famine and civil war, and civilization will come to an end. And of course, that didn't happen. And as you pointed out, now population growth rates are declining throughout the world. And to really compensate for that and prevent massive population shortages, and think about this, we already have massive labor shortages in the United States. We would need a combination of longevity, healthy longevity, and ectogenesis. Now, on the subject of politicians embracing longevity, there has very recently been formed a longevity science caucus. This is due to the efforts of A4LI, the Alliance for Longevity Initiatives, and it is a bipartisan caucus led by Congressman Paul Tonko, who is a Democrat, and Gus Bilirakis, who is a Republican. So I would encourage you to look up the Longevity Science Caucus. This gives us grounds for hope. It's not a replacement for the USTP, because ultimately I think the major parties' politicians, they could be persuaded to vote on certain kinds of funding for longevity research or certain kinds of policy reforms, but to really get the impetus for them to do that, they need outside voices to continue to press those particular issues. So Mike Lazine writes, also, a number of women with ectogenesis would not have to worry about the same symptoms of giving birth. No need to worry about needing a possible C-section and so on. Yes, there are multiple reasons why women would choose this. Alan Crowley asks to confirm, so candidates need to be humans. Yes, at least for president of the United States, because there's that constitutional requirement. I don't know if the requirement of being human necessarily exists in every jurisdiction. There has been a town in Alaska who elected a cat as its mayor, for example, and the mayor served honorably until his death. Unfortunately, I think he lived to be around 20 years old, this particular cat. But I think for president of the United States, we're going to need a human candidate. Alan Crowley also writes, let's find common ground with other parties where we can, at least on their professed party platforms. Yes, we've always been in favor of finding common ground. We're not an adversarial organization. We don't define ourselves as being against anyone. So we always seek a constructive solution. And if another party does have a constructive solution or a success in resolving a problem, we won't hesitate to acknowledge that. It's just that we need to stay away from these divide and rule dynamics that the major parties pursue. So now, Mike Lazine wonders, maybe we should also address how we will deal with GOP or Democrat congressional members when we do get into the White House. So this is a good question. And again, I would say the principle would be one of issue-based collaboration and engagement. So let's say there is this longevity science caucus in Congress, and it has members of both Republican and Democratic parties, and a transhumanist were hypothetically elected as president. Well, of course, this could be a source of support. And if the transhumanist president has certain policies that he or she advocates, and the Longevity Science Caucus could support those policies and help implement them through legislation in Congress, that would be quite welcome. So we would need to consider, where do individual members of Congress stand on issues related to science and technology, as well as other issues within the USTP platform, and see if on a case-by-case basis we could form coalitions to get particular pieces of legislation passed. This is actually a lot more common in parliamentary democracies than in this bipolar US model. But having a president from a third party would actually render the US system more prone to this kind of coalition building and shifting coalitions based on various issues, because we might be able to count on some Congress people's support on one issue but not on another issue. So then let us move on to another question. We've had some discussion about the state of transhumanism in Europe. And Aurora Morgenstern writes that she regrets that the Transhumanist Party does not operate the way we do in Poland, and only in JEF Poland, the EU youth group, and her husband is the president of this organization in Poland, I think is what she means to say. That organization has transhumanist views. So there's not really an established transhumanist party in Poland. There is a youth organization which has an affinity to transhumanism and is probably the strongest such organization here today. So it's an interesting question.
Start one.
Yes.
Start one.
We would encourage.
Go for it, Aurora. Start one up.
We would encourage other transhumanist parties to form in other countries. Obviously, each party will be a bit different in terms of how it's structured and what political system it's working within. But in multi-party parliamentary democracies, it's actually easier to get some electoral success than it is in the United States. She also writes, Europe is too neutral. It needs to be radicalized. Ultimately, each of us will sooner or later become a transhumanist. Well, I certainly hope so. And this is what we are aiming toward with our activism. Even if people belong to different political parties, they can still describe themselves as transhumanists. Indeed, they can still join the US Transhumanist Party. We try to make membership as open and inclusive as possible. But really, the main desired outcome that we have is not getting our candidates elected. That would be nice, but our candidates ultimately serve the role of spokespersons for transhumanism, for the ideas of transhumanism. The ultimate goal is to have transhumanism be the next paradigm of human civilization. And it's a much more ambitious goal than electing a few people to office here or there. But we want the philosophy of transhumanism and its advocacy of technology for the explicit improvement of the human condition to be the system of thought that animates the next era of civilization. It would be in the background. Whether or not people are aware of it or call themselves transhumanists, though we hope that people do that, it will be essentially a force leading the revival of our civilization and the taking of our civilization to new heights. Go ahead, Jason.
The transhumanism in politics, there are some transhumanists that I know and respect that, aren't fully sold on the idea of a political party being, transhumanist. But, we need a voice in the space, and David Wood has a good saying that I love that, and I think is true, that, sooner or later, whatever it is, it all comes back to politics. If you don't have a voice in that space, you don't have a voice in that space. You know what I mean? So this is necessary. We have to have a voice in the space. That's it. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And Daniel Tweed points out that if we want to win over Democrats to transhumanism, the reversibility of death remarks from Hubert Humphrey, who then became the vice president to Lyndon Johnson, from the October 13th, 1962 congressional record is pretty great. And indeed, we discussed Hubert Humphrey's remarks in our virtual Enlightenment Salon with Carl Carlisle. So please check that out. That was on February 12th, 2023. And indeed, it is amazing that now, more than 60 years ago, Hubert Humphrey made more ambitious statements in favor of the conquest of death. He used those words than politicians dare to make today.
Could I add a little context to that? It was October '62, and we were locked in the Cold War with the Soviet Union. And I think this was mostly a response. Hubert Humphrey talks about visiting a medical facility in the Soviet Union and seeing dead animals being shocked back to life. And he's like, oh my gosh, there's going to be like a longevity arms race we need to get in front of, So it's kind of funny that it was an artifact of, we had the space race going on. So we had the medical innovation longevity race, apparently, which was heating up the discussion. So I thought that's one context to look at those remarks in.
Yes, and sometimes great power rivalries do result in beneficial technological advances, even if the motive is we have to get ahead of the other great power. At least if it's channeled constructively, then it can lead to some broader human benefit.
Yeah, most innovation and inventions are a result of offensive or defensive conflict scenarios. Go ahead, Lisa. There.
Also, I'd like to say that having a political party that's based on transhumanism also does transhumanism another service, because we codify what transhumanism is. We vote on ideas. We come to consensus over transhumanist ideas. No other transhumanist organization really does that. So when someone comes in and says, "Oh, well, transhumanism is just about blah 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 blah," we can say, "No, it is not. Look, we voted on it. We have come to consensus to say it is not, and it's right there in black and white. See?"
Yes.
Back to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And indeed, there are many misrepresentations of transhumanism in the media or in certain alt-right circles. As I pointed out, unfortunately, transhumanism has become a favorite subject of conspiracy theories among the alt-right, but they never bother to actually converse with transhumanists. They just make things up. And whatever you hear from, say, Alex Jones or many others within this alt-right talk radio sphere is just completely invented by them. There's no basis in truth for it. The only exception I would make is for critics of transhumanism who choose to engage with actual transhumanists and then say, well, the transhumanists whom we spoke with said this, we disagree, and here's why. With that kind of sincere engagement, with that kind of criticism, I would say that's just part of public discourse as it should be. And I have no problem with that. And I'd be happy to engage any critics of transhumanism directly. But a lot of the conspiracy theories that we have been hearing are pure misrepresentation. And we just need to put our voices out there to a greater extent. We need more articulate advocates of transhumanism to counter those conspiracy theorist narratives. And hopefully our presidential nominee, our vice presidential nominee, and all of us going forward are going to contribute our voices to that endeavor. And then Luis Arroyo asks, would the USTP back a dual power approach in an attempt to change society from both within the government and outside of it? Yes, I would say, indeed, this is what we are doing. So the US Transhumanist Party isn't just about endorsing candidates. It's not just about monitoring legislation and taking positions on bills or ballot questions. It's also about culture. It's about philosophy. It's about science and technology and how all of these areas interrelate. And so advocacy within the broader society, within the broader culture, is necessary for political success as well, because as is often said, politics is downstream of culture. So in order for politicians to really take action on a particular issue, they have to know that there's a constituency behind those issues. They have to know that people will care, that it will affect their chances of getting reelected. Otherwise, they might give those issues short shrift. And I think, unfortunately, with longevity, there hasn't been enough of an effort to convince politicians that, yes, many people do care about leading longer and healthier lives and curing diseases through science and technology. And Matt Alex Richards writes, at one moment, Newt Gingrich talked about this problem. Yes, Newt Gingrich is sympathetic to longevity research. He was indeed in a session, this was in 2021, along with Steve Israel, who is a former Democratic congressman. And they were both saying essentially they could find ways to get visibility for longevity in Congress if they could make a convincing case to their colleagues or their former colleagues that there's enough public support behind it. And this is where we come in to build up that base. Because yes, even among Republicans and Democrats, there are people in positions of power and influence who may be sympathetic. Joe Biden may be sympathetic because his son, Beau, died of cancer. And since that time, Joe Biden has been quite emphatic about the need to devote more resources to medical research against cancer. And now, recently, Joe Biden himself had a cancerous tumor removed. It was a skin tumor. Hopefully, there won't be any sort of metastasis or recurrence, but it would be a reminder for him that this is an urgent problem, that it needs to be combated. So if
I remember something about a moonshot.
yes, the cancer moonshot.
Yeah.
This is one of his initiatives. He originally proposed it during the Obama administration, and then it went private when Trump was in office. And there are efforts to resurrect the cancer moonshot now. So again, when we talk about acknowledging the good efforts made by people within the mainstream political parties, this is one of them. I hope that it's successful. So
yeah, we should be able to say, hey, what's good and what's bad or whatever, without everybody thinking we're on one side or the other.
yes,
You know,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we can say good things about the cancer moonshot when Joe Biden is championing it. We can say good things about Newt Gingrich when he makes comments in favor of longevity or in favor of bases on the moon. Interestingly enough, Newt Gingrich, when he ran in the Republican primary in 2012, was the only candidate talking about bases on the moon, and he was derided for it by some of the diehard partisan Republicans. And I was thinking, when I was monitoring the Republican primaries, well, this is actually a desirable, salutary feature of Newt Gingrich's platform. And the fact that he was derided for it disillusioned me about the Republican Party. A lot of things disillusioned me about the Republican Party, but this was definitely one of them, that there were good insights and ideas put forth by some of the candidates, but unfortunately the very toxic dynamics of that political party prevented them from really coming to the forefront. Now, Matt Alex Richards writes, did Andrew Yang address the problem of aging? Will he run this time? Well, this is a good question. Will he run this time? So Andrew Yang is no longer a Democrat. He founded the Forward Party, and the Forward Party has been advocating reforms that we support as well, such as ranked preference voting, nonpartisan redistricting, and more generally, more competition, more transparency, more openness in elections. So removing some of those barriers to entry. I think the Forward Party is definitely a good, constructive organization. There have been mixed reports about whether Andrew Yang plans to run for president on behalf of the Forward Party in 2024, or whether the Forward Party will be more of an issue-based advocacy organization and maybe supporting local candidates. We shall see. I plan to reach out to Andrew Yang and ask him that particular question. But in terms of his support for life extension, I know that he has met with transhumanists before. One of our members, Keith Yu, met with Andrew Yang back in 2018. And in that conversation, it didn't seem like Andrew Yang was that deeply aware of what transhumanism was. But when Keith explained it to him, Andrew Yang did say, well, based on that explanation, I guess I'm a transhumanist. So there is some hope, and we would definitely want to have more engagement with Andrew Yang to figure out what his plans are and how our plans might align with his. So
I did see someone critique him quite effectively, or actually the whole Forward Party. Forward Party is kind of unique. They don't really have as much of a platform as we do. And that's like where he kind of got a little bit shredded by this one, interview guy, where he was like, "What's your position on this?" And then he didn't really have an answer. And he's like, "How can you run if you don't have a position?" And so I like the Forward Party, but again, my point is, I don't think that their platform is anywhere near as developed as ours. And so
I'd like to make a comment about other ways to get forward-looking thinking introduced into society, and that's the corporate officership called Chief Sustainability Officer, which is the fastest growing corporate office of the last decade or so. But the mission of the CSO is to ask, what is the business model 15 years from now for this corporation? And it's somewhat sad that only some of the Fortune 100 corporations can afford to staff a position like this. But something the USTP might position itself to do is to kind of be the small business chief sustainability officer. We could actually use token protocols like the POAP token, proof of activity protocol token, which is designed to be open source and free by its inventor. So I'll put a link to that. But I think this is a way of creating digital twins that are accessible to improve governance at the political and the non-political levels of society. So more to follow on that. I'll put the link to the proof of activity protocol, POAP.xyz. It's a pretty great project. It can be used for all sorts of things. It's kind of a digital souvenir of or an NFT that you were present or at a certain event or activity. So it's something we could really use take more advantage of with our movement.
Very interesting. So thank you, Daniel. And I will want to take the opportunity during the last 7 minutes or so that we have to address as many of the remaining questions and comments as we can. So Zach Richardson, our director of publication, writes, a lot of helium up on the moon, I hear. That could provide some capital for the initial phase. Well, generally, the harnessing of resources on other worlds could greatly increase our material wealth and provide capital for improving the infrastructure on Earth. So I completely agree. Ampero writes, I doubt humans will cure cancer. Artificial intelligence will likely do the job. Well, it will be a partnership between humans and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence could definitely do a lot more efficient data analysis. And ultimately, the issue with cancer is not one disease. Even in a specific organ, cancer is not one disease. There are so many genetic variants of particular cancers, and they mutate, they evolve as well. So yes, having artificial intelligence on our side in that endeavor would definitely help significantly, but humans still need to know what are the right questions to ask, what are the right tasks to put AI to work on. And then Mike Lazine writes, so in the media, people are often demonized for the sake of creating, quote, engaging entertainment or drama. This is an extremely unfortunate reality of our time. The media have long ago ceased to be objective, and they're just trying to maximize clicks and maximize views, hence the commonplace slogan, if it bleeds, it leads. There are many situations where something may be going right. Certain circumstances, certain parameters of human well-being may actually be improving, and the media do not cover that because it doesn't make for enticing headlines by which they could sell content. So we definitely need a new model of information dissemination that bypasses these established media giants whose main role is to misinform for ephemeral views and clicks.
I'm really optimistic about that in that area because the YouTube, I'm not trying to brag up YouTube, but I almost trust the people on some of these channels on YouTube more than I do the mainstream media. I mean, because this guy on YouTube, he don't he's not obligated or in debt to someone. The people that pay him are the people that are watching him. So he's not beholden to a corporation or So
Yes.
I'm optimistic.
Mhm. Yes, and absolutely not being beholden to interests that incentivize ulterior motives is, I think, the key. And there could be many different models of how a good information source operates. But the key is that whatever one's incentives are, they be aligned with the sharing of true information. And of course, the intent has to be to provide some sort of better outcome in the world. It could just be making sure that people are better informed, that they have the facts at their disposal. Or it could be that we do something with this information to transform the world for the better. And that doesn't mean there won't be bias. Everyone has some sort of bias. We have biases as well. And obviously, the Transhumanist Party has biases. Otherwise, we wouldn't be engaged in any form of advocacy. But the key is to know what our biases are, know what other people's biases are, and be honest about it, instead of what the mainstream media does, which is to posture as being objective, when in reality they're nothing but. They're the least objective sources we could have. So, yes, thank you for those remarks, Jason. And now let us see if we can point out a few other viewer comments and questions. Sergei Gubkin writes, we can accommodate the American-born population collapse by increased immigration. Yes, that is correct, at least for a time. But of course, if populations are either increasing at diminishing rates or declining in other parts of the world, this can only go on for so long. So ultimately, we need other solutions, and immigration is a stopgap. And we definitely want all people throughout the world to live longer and healthier lives and not face the issues that come with a demographic imbalance.
Yeah, and again, that's probably an area where the U.S. is not doing too bad. I mean, we have immigration. I mean, we're trying to slow it down. So I mean, if you got to build a barbed wire to keep your people in, well, then you're maybe not doing so good. So that's not a problem
Right.
for us, at least. People
Right.
want to come.
Matt Alex Richards writes, Japan, South Korea, and China all have more and more aged people. They really need to address it, and hopefully some sort of rejuvenation approach. I hope that their politicians and their scientists are of a similar mindset. It's true that their population imbalance is greater than ours. For China, it's because of the horrible failed one-child policy. And for Japan and South Korea, in part, this is the result of a salutary phenomenon. They have some of the greatest life expectancies in the world, but yes, they need more people within their economies to maintain productive output. And some of that gap is, of course, being filled by robots. So we can have greater innovation in robotics from parts of the world like Japan and South Korea. And Daniel Tweed writes, we've got pretty good freedom of expression here in the Western democracies, and we've got the brainwashed people to prove it. So it's true. If you have freedom of speech, freedom of exchange of ideas, that doesn't mean everyone is going to arrive at the correct ideas. Some people are going to be wrong. Some people are going to be egregiously and obstinately wrong. That's not a reason to abridge their freedom of speech. It is a reason to spread true and accurate information and help people arrive at the truth to the extent that is possible. And I think with free inquiry and open discussion and debate, we can get there. Indeed, the solution to wrong speech is more speech, not suppressing speech. So thank you very much to our audience. I think we had a great session engaging with all of your questions and comments. Thank you to our officers and our members who participated on this panel. And until next time, live long and prosper.